Cosmere Connections. We're a bunch of book-loving nerds rereading Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere series. From book 1 to book 16 million, we'll be uncovering every secret connection there is to find. Today we are joined by Swiggity Swoo.
Hey, what's going on? Today's Cosmere ice cream flavor of the week is marshmallow.
John.
Thank you. I am caught with my pants down and don't have a quote. Oops.
NK.
Somehow we'll find the balance between who we wish to be and who we need to be.
I almost picked that, but it was way too serious for me.
And I'm ReaderWarrior. And today we're going to be talking about Mistborn, Hero of Ages, Part 2, Cloth and Glass, chapters 19 to 23. We're already halfway through this part. Yay.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you didn't pick that quote, John, because then I would have had to find something else. Then I would have been caught with my pants down, not having a quote.
Mine was just an ice cream flavor that I didn't even come up with.
I mean, yeah, but none of us can claim credit for that. That came from your Facebook post, so...
Okay. John, I believe you had 19, don't you?
I do.
I remember.
Look at that. I had to scroll up in my notes to check and make sure, because I don't remember the numbers. I just, I did this on Sunday, okay? All right, well, I will not hold us up then. Yes, the ash was black. No, it should not have been. Most common ash has a dark component, but it is just as much gray or white as it is black. Ash from the ash mounts, it was different. Like the mists themselves, the ash covering our land was not truly a natural thing. Perhaps it was the influence of Ruin's power, as black as preservation was white, or perhaps it was simply the nature of the ash mounts, which were designed and created specifically to blast ash and smoke into the sky. So a little more exposition on Rashik's tampering with the functionality of the planetary system.
And I believe we had somebody asking chapters ago about why the ash was just black.
And now you
Didn't
know.
we? And now we know.
We talked about it. We did. We touched on it,
It's actually mentioned all the way back in Final Empire that the ash is black.
It is mentioned, but I don't think anybody really questioned it or thought about it at that point.
Yeah.
Not that it would necessarily be something you would think of, but I just like that it's canon from the very beginning.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is a good point. That shows the planning Sanderson can really do. So this was a pretty short chapter. We come into the scene with young Spook laying on the ground, kind of with a thoroughly smacked gob. And a voice tells him to get up, but he feels really numb and he struggles to think, and he realizes it's because he's out of tin. The voice tells him he will die soon and that the flames will kill him if he doesn't do something, which is when he finally realizes, oh yeah, it's hot in here. The voice guides him to another room with a desk that has metal vials in it, and Spook thinks on how familiar that voice sounds to him. He then struggles to get there, but when he finally finds the vials, they don't have any tin. He isn't sure how that would have helped him anyway, but the voice tells him to burn the metal. And so Spook looks inside himself, and he's shocked to realize that he has a new reservoir of power within him. He burns it, and somehow he's gained the ability to burn pewter. The voice steps closer, and now Spook can recognize the speaker before him. It is Kelsier.
It's my boy!
What?
Back from the dead.
Back from the
You
dead!
cannot kill hope.
Who else? Who else but Kelsier?
This chapter, I remember blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Because you got Spook burning a second metal, which we know the rules are you get all, what are there, 14 now? 14? Yeah.
14.
You either get all 14 or you get one. Somehow Spook's got 2. And Kelsier is back? Question mark. Spook's hallucinating.
Spook's loopy.
He really did die. This is all in his head.
You can't kill
I
me.
Bleeding
definitely,
out.
definitely in this chapter when I first read it, I definitely thought Spook was hallucinating.
So did I.
Mhm.
And I was a little bit shocked, only a little bit, that he was still alive. Because the last
talking
time we
about
saw him,
Spook
he
or
was stabbed in
Kelsier?
the chest. Like
In the shoulder.
that's
Okay,
still
we're talking
part of
about
your
Spook.
chest.
That describes both
It's-
Spook and Kelsier. You were talking about which one?
Mhm.
Fair point.
When I read this chapter, the first thing I thought was like, of course he's back. they could never kill him. He could never stay dead. He's Kelsier. He's my boy. I was
cannot
pumped.
kill
I was
him.
not surprised. I was just like, obviously, that's my dude.
I gotta almost imagine, like, in a movie format, how hyped it would be if you see the actor who played Kelsier coming back and, like, stepping out of, like, the smoke and flames and just like, come on, let's go. Like, how cool that would be.
It'd be
Get your
fantastic.
lazy butt up, kid. We gotta get out of here.
If it was a TV show, it would be like the stinger right before the commercial or something, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Well, it's the end of the chapter when they finally say Kelsier.
The survivor. But clearly something weird is happening because he's like not being bothered by the flames, and he's like a shadowy figure. Like there's some sketchiness happening here. We just don't quite know what it is yet.
Yeah.
Somehow Kelsier knew that this was a pewter arm / thug's house, and he knew where the vial was.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that are. It's like, how did it, like, what? How did he know where to go? Like, how did he know that this was the house of someone who used to be a pewter arm? Like,
How did he know Spook could burn 2 metals?
I was thinking the same too when I first read it. Of like, what good is it gonna do him if he finds those metal vials and they have tin? Isn't it just gonna make the flames way hotter?
Right.
yeah. Like, honestly, it's kind of advantageous at this point that Spook doesn't have any tin because he can't really feel the heat.
Yeah, for
Like,
real.
we saw that, like, stars were like suns. Imagine, like, the light that's coming from the flames. He would be blind.
Hmm.
I would say
running down that
overall
road.
this chapter was like intense and pretty fun to read, but in terms of like stuff to talk about, I can't really think of much to say about it.
Yeah, it's just basically, oh wow, Kelsier. Oh wow. That's it.
Yeah. It's exciting. He's got pewter now. We don't really know why or how, but that's cool.
Brandon's never let us down before.
Yep.
Anything else for chapter 19?
Not really.
Okay, you have chapter 20.
I do
Like-
have chapter 20. It is
I
another
wonder why.
TenSoon chapter. But before we get into that, so in the epigraph, it talks about the. I'm not gonna read it. Like, stop gasping.
Cookies and creme.
Like,
What are you, the Great Gatsby? Sorry, I saw that in a commercial once and I thought it was hilarious.
so in the epigraph, it talks about how the mist feel like it was definitely sentient, and people talked about feeling a hatred from the mist. And it would the mist would swirl around people that it favored, and that it would pull away from people that it didn't like as much, that it didn't. Um, and the reason for this came down to how much that person was responding to Ruin's influence.
So the implication that you got is that it's the person that dictates whether the mist likes you or not.
It is how much the person responds to Ruin's influence. Correct.
I read it as the mist was the one under Ruin's subtle touch.
No, see, so because it says it all came down to Ruin's subtle touch and how much one responded to his promptings. The one that they're talking about is referring to the people.
But the it refers to
His is referring to Ruin.
No, but the mist, all came down to Ruin's subtle touch and how much one responded to his
No,
promptings.
it, as in whether or not the mist was pulling away or pulling towards someone. So how the mist was, how the mist was acting.
I'm kind of with
It
Kay
is
on this
referring
one.
to the mist. It's talking about the mist, how the mist was acting.
Which is
I'm in agreement with Kay. I'm just trying to say this is how I read.
oh, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Didn't we see the mist? Didn't we see the mist like kind of fleeing Vin earlier?
Mm-hmm. As well as human.
Who said they were of Ruin?
No, who said that the mist didn't like them, that the mist hated them? So, alright.
It's the Conjure that claim everybody else is Ruin.
Yeah.
If they are of preservation, everything else is of Ruin.
Right.
Speaking of Kandra, let's get into the chapter. So, in this chapter, it's a fairly short chapter, but TenSoon is. So, the reason for the long delay, which I think it was either 2 weeks or a month, I can't quite remember which one, between.
It was a month.
Was it a month? Okay. I couldn't quite remember. But the reason for the delay between TenSoon, between TenSoon's talk and his sentencing, his trial and his sentencing, was so that they could put him in a cage on display for all of the other Kandra to walk by and see. So he is in a cage with metal bars, and also between the bars is metal wires to prevent him from essentially squishing himself and trying to slide out the cage. So he's in this cage and he's feeling humiliated. I mean, that is he is feeling humiliated by being put in this cage because he's like, I am Kandra, I'm not gonna run away. Like, there's no reason for this cage other than to put me on display as if I'm a human stockade, like, for people to just gawk at and see.
Yeah, I like that detail. It's like humiliating that they're putting him in the cage to humiliate him, but the fact that he's in a cage is humiliating because obviously we know he's the honorable type. He literally came back to confess in the first place. That's why he's even here.
Yeah.
And in his mind, his crime is following the greater contract.
Mm-hmm.
Even that is still following the contract. He still does as he's ordered.
Yeah. So he's stuck in this cage, and all the Kandra are walking past him and looking and gawking at him and staring at him. And MeLaan comes up and talks to him, and she is we can tell, well, partially, one of the things that we learned from this conversation is that she was raised by TenSoon.
She's his daughter.
Yeah, she's his daughter, essentially. She and some of her other friends were all raised by TenSoon growing up. He's the one who taught them how to be Kandra. So, like, she has a very deep bond with TenSoon. So she's very upset that this is happening to him. And she's telling him, she's like, we need to rebel against the second generation. Because this is not right what they're doing. They're not listening to you. They're not paying attention to what's going on. Someone needs to wake them up and get them to listen. They're not going to listen to get someone who will in charge. So, and the entire time TenSoon, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to be the leader that you want. I'm not going to do this. I am a Kandra. I'm going to follow them. Don't fight against our own. We are Kandra. Don't attack our own. And it, throughout this conversation, MeLaan brings up a comment that TenSoon was broken by his previous master. Because he's not
Zane?
to do this. And TenSoon is like, no, Zane didn't break me. Zane didn't do anything to me. And she's like, but who put you in those horrible bones? He's like, Vin did. Vin gave me those. And she's very disgusted by the fact that he wore the dog's bone. Which he remarks is interesting, considering that she chooses a true body that is inhuman. It is very inhuman, and it is of itself. And as he does this, he kind of thinks of a plan. He's not quite sure if he's going to use it, but if the opportunity presents itself, he might. And he kind of plants a seed. And he tells MeLaan that he hated the dog's bones. He hated wearing them. He hated being forced to do this. As kind of, he's hoping that whoever the second generation put on guard to watch him and listen is listening in and hears this.
And it's smart too, because clearly they enjoy trying to humiliate him, like leaving him locked up in this cage naked for everyone to see for like a month. So, solid plan.
Yeah. And that's where the chapter ends.
I never realized until this chapter that it's pretty meaningful, his conversion. Like, him befriending Vin is maybe more of a big deal than I would have gave credit for, because he kind of remarks on how, like, up until that, he was one of the more conservatives. He was known as a good conjurer because he hated humans. So in a way, if there was any of the conjurer that you would want to convince, it would probably be him.
Well, and also if you think about it, the second generation hated the third generation, but they still gave TenSoon Kandra to train in the seventh generation. So that had to show that TenSoon was well liked by the second generation. Out of the rest of the thirds, he was more well liked than a lot of the other third generation.
Yeah, he had clout.
Kandra. Mm-hmm.
So TenSoon was the only. You're saying that TenSoon is probably the only third that was to train.
I don't know if he was the only one, but it wouldn't surprise me, because he makes a comment earlier that I think that the third generations really didn't get to train the following generations, because they the second generations didn't want the third's rebellious nature to rub off on them.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't surprise me if they were very selective in which of the third generation Kandra that they allowed to train other Kandra.
Yeah. I
What?
the heck?
John, all I
John,
hear is
focus.
clicking over there.
Oh, is my mouse coming through?
Yeah, it's kind of distracting.
Yeah.
Sorry, I will make an adjustment. Like I said, new microphone, still working out the fine details.
You're good, man.
There were two other things I wanted to bring up. One was that there was a quick little line about TenSoon not knowing what happened with Vin at the well.
Yes.
I have to wonder what his reaction would be or is going to be of learning that Vin released Ruin, who seems to be the devil of the Kandra faith, or religion, or society.
Wait, can you say that again?
Which part?
What do you have to wonder?
I have to wonder what TenSoon is going to think when he finds out Vin released Ruin from the well, considering Ruin is kind of the Satan or devil figure of the Kandra's faith or society.
Oh, he's probably just gonna roll his eyes. That sounds like her. Doesn't understand conscious society at all. She's doing her best, though, huh?
Boy, could that girl not get fooled?
Yeah. Fell right into Zane's trap. Not surprised this happened.
Yep. My other note is that we've got another blessing. Now we've got the blessing of awareness referenced. And so far we have potency and presence as well. So now we've got 3 blessings.
Which,
And
like...
to remind people,
Okay.
potency is where you are stronger. Presence is that your mind can't be like broken easily. And now awareness is heightened senses.
Yeah.
Which
Seems
makes sense.
That was terrible, John.
I made a funny.
Did we learn in this chapter that, like, the blessings are kind of what turn the Kandra... Well, they make them from Mistwraiths to Kandra?
Yes, that is correct. We do learn that in this chapter. I forgot to mention it. Yeah, TenSoon mentions that he sees some new 11th generation who have just recently gotten their blessings to be
Right.
that they don't know how to form body yet, because the transformation from Mistwraith to Kandra is apparently really difficult on them, and it causes them to forget a lot about how to make muscles and put bones into the body.
They go from being instinctual to thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
I have to wonder if you give a Mistwraith one of the 3 different blessings we've seen, will it create 3 different personalities?
That's a good
Like
question.
if you have the same Kandra, give it the blessing of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Will that be different than a Kandra that's been given the blessing of potency or presence?
Interesting. I bet they share... I bet if you give 2 different Kandra potency, they'll have similar personalities, but they won't be, like... Obviously, they won't be identical, right?
Yeah, but I'm like, if you could, duplicate one Kandra 3 times, and you gave it being the same one 3 different blessings, would it be the same Kandra, or would it be 3 different? want?
I don't know. I could see it going either way, just from a canon standpoint, but like my gut tells me it would be like taking the same person and raising them in a different situation, right? You're gonna have some similar personality traits, but you'll have other different ones. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I like that.
That's just my gut.
Yeah. Anything else for chapter 20?
I think we learned that TenSoon really enjoyed eating human food, and I thought that was cute.
Not to be mistaken with
Aged meat.
food that is human.
That too, probably.
Swiggity, I believe you have 21.
Hey, yes, I do. It's a little thing called an epigraph here.
That you could summarize if you wanted to.
It's too late. I failed to do that. It should
You
be.
can't
I
just
write it out
summarize.
completely.
It'd be quicker if I
My
just read it.
notes.
It'd be quicker. It should be no surprise that
Copy
Ellen
paste
became
Copperman.
such a powerful allomancer. It is well documented fact that the documentation wasn't. Oh my god! Let me restart. It should be no surprise that Ellen became such a powerful allomancer. It is a well documented fact, though that documentation wasn't available to most, that allomancers were much stronger during the days of the Final Empire. In those days, an allomancer didn't need duralumin to take control of a conjurer or koloss. A simple push or pull on the emotions was enough. In fact, this ability was one of the main reasons that the conjurer devised their contracts with the humans. For at that time, not only Mistborn, but soothers and riders could take control of them at the merest of whims.
Whoa.
So yeah, back in the day, like,
See, that was really quick.
you could literally be taken over by Joe Schmo on the street. Didn't even have to be a Mistborn. Breeze could walk over to you and be like, you know, tie my
Go
shoe.
get me some wine.
Oh, that's what he would say.
Which explains why TenSoon didn't really like him all that much. But I also have to wonder, since we know that it's genetic and that the dilution of the allomancy gene basically takes you from a Mistborn to a Misting over time, and then that dilutes into how we have nobles strength, in which in this chapter, I believe we talk about the nobles even struggled to have allomancers, even though like they're direct descendants of these people who originally got the powers. So I wonder, first of all, when did you first get Mistings? And then also, when did the terms like Soother, Rioter, Pewter Arm start showing up?
All over time. Just kind of developed with everything else. I wonder if maybe it was like some mixing of the bloodlines that started to make the Mistborns break down to the individual powers or something like that. So
I can see that.
the first thing we learn in this chapter is a follow-up to a previous chapter where Demu got sick. The first thing we learn is that he survived.
Yay!
Yay! And this chapter kind of delves into that process a little bit more. But before that, we start with a Vin point of view where she's watching Elend in his regal white outfit, determination burning in his eyes as he contemplates in silence, facing the horizon. Vin begins to read from Elendi's logbook, a passage stating that the deepness is alive. The deepness must be destroyed. I have seen it and I have felt it. The name that was given to it is too weak, I think. Yes, it is deep and unfathomable, but it is also terrible. Many do not realize that it is sapient, but I have sensed its mind, such it is, and few times I have confronted it directly.
I went back and checked. That quote is accurate. That is what was originally written. There's been no tampering. Although I think the more important thing is the next quote that comes right after that one, and it is a thing of destruction, madness, and corruption. It would destroy this world not out of spite or out of animosity, but simply because that is what it does. Now, doesn't that sound like the definition of ruin?
Yeah. It's cool to see from Final Empire you have this thing, oh, the deepness, you know. And even in that book, it's kind of questioned, is it just the mists? Because it's kind of how it's represented. And you're thinking like, okay, but we already have mists, so how could that be it? And now you're starting to see how quickly things can change. Talk about the mists hating you. Vin is concerned she's not up to the task of dealing with ruin. Feeling like she's alone in this, she remembers how Kelsier had broken down the larger-than-life idea of overthrowing the final empire into manageable steps and attempts to do the same. She remembers holding the power and understanding it. She realizes that ruin must be bound by some kind of rules, or there wouldn't have been a struggle at the Well of Ascension, and there would be no need to trick Vin into releasing it. Vin asks Elend what the first rule in Allomancy is, and he says that for every action there's a reaction, consequences, prompting Vin to realize that the force at the well is probably similarly bound, just like Allomancy. Elend worries he's becoming too much like the Lord Ruler by sacrificing men to the mist, and Vin thinks, in Reen's voice, that ruthlessness is the most practical of emotions. Elend tells Vin about how noble houses used to beat children in order to release latent allomantic abilities. And he expounds upon that, saying that even though maybe it's a positive thing that he stopped those beatings, which now kids can kind of opt into that if they so choose, it might have been almost valuable if he'd have just let that process continue to happen. He even goes as far.
I would like to point out real quick, it's not that kids can opt in. Once they are adults, they can choose to get beaten if they would like to try to unlock allomantic powers.
Really? You can't get beaten as a kid?
No, that was the rule he
No.
changed. that
No
you
beating
can't be-
children.
No beating children.
I remember being a kid.
had a-
If I was a kid and superpowers were on the table, I'd take a beating.
I might try it.
Okay,
Heck
but
yeah.
I got a brief complaint here. Is it... So we know that snapping, capital S, is due to your body in a fight mode. It's grasping on. It's like, if I don't snap and unleash this power, I will die. Which we saw with Kelsier in the pits is not necessarily, it doesn't need to be a physical thing, it's a mental thing.
Mm-hmm.
So does signing up, having somebody say, hey, you're going to your appointment, it's like, here's 10 boxings to beat me and see if I have superpowers. But they're basically saying, don't worry, we won't actually kill you. Doesn't that assurance that we're only going to beat you a little bit, not to the point where you're actually going to die, take away from the
I think it's
mindset
similar.
of, if I don't awaken this power, I will die.
I think if you go to like let's say you go to a haunted house, right? Like it's the same idea. Like you paid for that stressful environment, but it still might activate those feelings of fear in you, and it still might scare you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they still beat you. You're still gonna get beaten close to death.
But I was wondering if it's the psychological thinking, I am going to die unless I somehow find a way to fight. But if you're basically paying people and they're saying, don't actually kill you, then that thought won't really happen. That desperate
But,
need won't
I mean, I also,
hurt.
but like,
All they have to
when
do
the
is make
noble
you sign a
children-
waiver.
Also, some of the kids
Also-
did die, right?
Well, yeah, but that's in like the old way. I'm saying with Ellen, you can have an appointment to see if you have allomancy, basically.
but they still might still have a chance of dying from the beating. Because you have to be beaten close to death.
You just imagine that, like, in so many books, there's a chapter where the hero has to do some test or pass some crazy thing. And, imagine if the book was just like, today I'm going to get the crap
Hold
kicked
still.
out of me for like an hour and a half, probably. We'll see what
Stand there
happens.
and take it like a man.
Yeah. So he kind of expounding upon that, he says that, if Kelsier had been, his powers had been released earlier, maybe Mare would have stayed alive. And Vin quickly shuts that down, saying that, like, in that specific situation, it was necessary for Kelsier to go through that to have the motivation to take down the Lord Ruler. And she says that there has to be a balance to all this. And Elend's kind of saying, the only reason I felt comfortable taking the throne was because I knew that I would have let it go if it wasn't the right thing. And he says if he ever loses that, Vin needs to call him out on it. Which I love. They have a great relationship.
I love that. Sorry, the whole Vin thing about, hey, what's the first thing taught you? It's like the consequence for every opposite reaction. There's an equal action. Third law, right there.
I like that too.
Okay, nobody got my physics.
No, I got it.
Everybody got your physics joke.
Everyone got your physics joke. It
But
just
nobody
wasn't
laughed at the physics joke.
because it wasn't
I mean, it wasn't.
really funny.
Yeah, it was just accurate,
Yeah.
which is
Okay,
more or less better.
Hey, it's
I'll just sulk back here.
Aw, don't be pouty face.
no Rock Bud Crunch,
I
okay?
got other things.
So,
I'll let Swiggity finish though.
moving on with the chapter, our favorite cheery obligator Norden shows up. I love the line.
Yay!
Vin used to think that a happy obligator was only a bad sign until she met Norden. So he's coming.
Now she thinks
that,
it's
like-
only sometimes a bad sign.
Yeah. In this case,
I
it
could have sworn
kind of
wasn't that a line in like the prologue of the Final Empire with you have the one guy talking about, hey, bring your services here, and he looks out to the field and sees Kelsier, and the obligator is happy and says, oh, that's disturbing.
I think you're 100% right.
Yeah.
It certainly sounds correct, and it fits the theme for those early chapters. Gosh, it feels like that was so long ago.
Yeah.
It was.
It was a year ago.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I'll double check, but Swiggity, you can continue.
So, basically, I want to find it now. I have the Final Empire. Okay. Norden is coming to tell Elend the results of a census he's been taking. And these are reports of the sick and death tolls from the mist sickness, basically. Vin asks, why are you guys saying that it's less than you expected? How can that be? And it eventually starts down this line of questioning that leads them to discover that exactly 16% of the men exposed to the mists are getting sick. In one such report, 100 men were exposed and exactly 16 got sick. Regardless of age, sex, or creed, 16% every single time. Elend orders further research and to check if the data has been skewed by Ruin. And it seems that Vin's earlier thoughts about how there must be some kind of governing rules that are contracting Ruin might actually have some validity to them. But why 16%? And that's it.
Why indeed?
True. There is a brief low line. Trusting felt a chill. The obligator smiled. He likely meant it to be disarming, but Trusting only found it eerie. That's it.
I count it.
Really quickly, I'm going to draw our and how there's always another secret in this chapter.
Add
Which
that to the
brings our
counter.
Total now up to 5. Yep.
I like how another thing that it brings up from this chapter that I feel like we haven't had mentioned in this book yet is that earring.
Green?
The earring
Oh yeah.
that Vin has been wearing since book 1, she's still with. Through like all this stuff that's been going on, she still holds it dear. Even though she doesn't like listen to Reen's voice anymore, she still has that little reminder with her. Just a cool detail.
Yeah. I feel like it rounds out who she is. Like Vin, even though she's gone, like I believe the last Vin chapter about how she was the Empress and she didn't like that role, and she was also the heir to the Survivor and she didn't like that role either. But that's who she is. But still, she has these connections back to when she was just a ska girl huddling in ditch, basically. She's still got her brother's voice in her head, which is concerning enough. She's still got her mother's earring.
Yep.
I did. So, Ellen talking about how he is comparable to the Lord Ruler, in which you can make that reference to a lot of historical figures and how, sometimes they're really bad historical figures, but they did do some kind of good things. But it really comes down to, why are you doing it? Like, Ellen is doing it to save the world. And it's kind of like the things that you don't understand show whether or not you are a person. Because Rashek did do these things, and it was to create an empire that lasted a good long while, almost 1,000 years. But he was racist, created horrible creatures, controlled, made slavery. He did all these really bad things. But Elend, even though he is kind of enforcing okay, we're going to keep everything as it is at the moment, I want to do those things. I want to make Ska and nobles equal.
There's some times when a leader has to kind of put their foot down, and like I'm wondering if maybe that's kind of it's the kind of the opposite of like the Khandra. Like they're kind of in denial, and they're kind of, that's why they're putting like TenSoon out to dry, because they can't accept the hard truths of the reality of the situation. And like Ellen, even though he's fighting against what he has to do, he still is going to save everybody if it's at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how much it like breaks him to do so.
I had one other thing, but first, does anybody else have any other for this chapter? Spook, you covered on it quickly, but I do want to read because I absolutely love it. We are thieves, he said, and we're extraordinarily good ones. We can rob the unrobbable and fool the unfoolable. We know how to take an incredibly large task and bring it down to manageable pieces and deal with each of those pieces. That day, when he had written of the team's goals and plans on a small board, Ben had been amazed by how possible he had made an impossible task seem. That day, a little bit of her had begun to believe that Kelsier could overthrow the final empire.
I think that's like the chapter that I fell in love with Mistborn. Honestly, that was just so exciting. Like, you have this giant, superior entity that just seems impenetrable and so large, and they do such a good job of making it seem like hopeless. But then in that planning stage, you kind of start to see like, oh my God, like in this book, we're actually going to get to see this happen. Like we're going to get to see them try to take down the final empire. It's just so exciting. It's such a promise.
And it works even better here because they're up against some godlike creature of ruin. The world is being smothered in ash, but we've faced these odds before. we faced an impossible task, and we've done it with these exact people.
The only difference
And they've all
now
grown.
is like the crew is just here and there and everywhere. I wish we had the crew back together.
Yeah.
Let's
thing
get
is
the
they've all
band back
grown.
together.
Yeah.
Breeze is no longer completely hiding the fact that he found somebody he likes. Spook's off doing his own thing. Then in that
Spooky.
in that one little line back then, Kelsier made her believe a tiny bit. Now Vin has hope and faith in her heart for things she can't understand. The Vin of Final Empire in part 1 of the Final Emperor would nowhere at all recognize who she is now.
So
It's
awesome.
beautifully written.
And she's again taking on something so much larger and so much more powerful, and she's just like tiny little Vin.
John, I believe you had chapter 22.
You believe correctly. So, the beads of metal found at the well, beads that made men into Mistborn, were the reason why Allomancers used to be more powerful. Those first Mistborn were as Ellen Venture became, possessing a primal power, which was then passed down through the lines of nobility, weakening a bit with each generation. The Lord Ruler was one of these ancient Allomancers, his power pure and unadulterated by time and breeding. That is part of why he was so mighty compared to other Mistborn. Though, admittedly, his ability to mix ferochemy and allomancy was what produced many of his most spectacular abilities. Still, it is interesting to me that one of his divine powers, his essential allomantic strength, was something every one of the original 9 Allomancers possessed.
So we have it right there. I think we've argued in the spoiler section a couple times whether Asha gave him a little oomph of allomancy, but it seems to imply right here by whoever's rating this, MeLaan, absolutely MeLaan, in that 1,000 years ago, 10 people had this power, although Rashek did have compounding because he was a ferochemist.
That is wild, because, like, the compounding is revealed at the very end, but also it's always talked about how he's just a super strong Allomancer. He's super strong.
So, if there were 10 original Allomancer, well, 9 plus Rashek, and then 2 beads, that would mean 12.
I know, I was just thinking the same thing. I was like, why is it 12? I feel like 12 is the wrong number.
It kinda is.
The reason we're getting 2 beats is because one went to Ellen and is a bit of a spoiler thing, but not really all that important. It disappeared before Ellen got his.
Right.
But
yes.
it is weird that 12 is such a weird number, especially considering now we've got 16.
Right, and that's why I was kind of thinking about it, like,
God, I hate to bring this up, but
well, maybe
it's not a spoiler.
maybe in the spoiler section.
It's not a spoiler. Okay. I'm just gonna say, like, the number 16 is important to the Cosmere, but I've noticed that, like, it's not ubiquitous in any way. Like, when it comes up, it seems to be pretty special, and, like, I keep looking for it, and I keep kind of getting disappointed almost. Like, I think, like, if you look for it in everything, you're gonna be disappointed, and some things are just as they are. Unless we find out that there was 4 beads that are unaccounted for somewhere else.
That could be, who knows? I mean, there's been 1,000 years in between the 10 that we know about initially and the 2 that we know about later. Something could have happened. But I think where 16 is important to the Cosmere, I think it's particularly important here because of reasons we can discuss in the spoiler section.
Okay.
Yes.
So with that, let's get through this chapter. So Sazed is visiting the elders of the remaining Terris people at the pits of Hathsin. He checks on their ledgers and what they are doing, but insists he has no authority over them and that his suggestions are only that and not commands. They ask him to stay with them since they are in need of a leader more than anything else. One of the elders notices that Sazed doesn't wear his metal mines, noting how he used to work so hard to do his duty despite the dangers, but now that he has the choice, he doesn't wear them. They say he's the only keeper left and they bless him. Sazed changes the subject, asking if any of the people have been affected with the mist sickness. None of them have. Sazed is perplexed by that and keeps pondering it a little before apologizing and finally leaving it to follow through with Ellen's orders. Yep, that's the chapter.
Short and sweet.
Short and sweet.
Just like vanilla.
I've got nothing for this.
Yeah, it's a very like the only like big important thing in this chapter is that the Terris people have not been affected by the mist sickness. That's important. But other than that, it's just kind of a brief update. Hey, how's Sazed doing?
Yeah.
Still not great.
Right,
Especially
pretty
now with
much.
the fact, like, he's being thrown into the role of a leader, but he does not want it. It's more like, this is what happens when the shoot. What is it called when the president gives the speech?
State of the Union?
The State of the Union, and we've got the Secretary of Agriculture now as the president. And
That's a West
sounds
Wing
like it's
reference
like
for all of you who are following
the only
along.
one.
Me and Kay just leave the call.
Just gonna hang up now.
Donald will be so upset.
What do you guys think
Stop.
about this? Like legitimately. I know everybody here loves Sazed.
Yes.
Why doesn't he just step up right now? Like he's clearly the wisest.
Sazed has never wanted to be a leader. He's never wanted to be the one in charge. And especially like with the fact that he has felt ousted and rejected by the Terris people for a significant portion of his life. I think he doesn't feel like he is worthy to lead them as well.
So there's maybe a bit of
I
resentment,
would also,
like lingering.
yeah, I was gonna say, I bet there's a little bit of a grudge. Like, you people were all cursing my name as I was forced to leave what we thought was our home, our religious home, and now you guys
No.
want me to be in charge?
I disagree. Sazed's never been that petty. I feel
No,
like
I
it's
doubt it's. I doubt
absolutely
it's forward in his mind. I'm just saying maybe a bit inside of him was like, really?
maybe, but I think it's the same shaken faith that he's been struggling with all along. This pain of loss that he's never really had a parallel to. It's a new experience and it's completely kind of just wiped him out. It's taken away any ambition that he did have, and I feel like Sazed never really wanted to be the guy. He wanted to be the guy who's got the guy's back.
Mm-hmm.
No, reader, nothing.
I'm in agreement.
No, that was a West Wing reference, and you totally missed it.
Sorry, I didn't.
That's okay.
If you make one more West Wing reference, I'm hanging up.
Definitely
That
need
was
a,
my
a
first one,
tolerance
come
of
on.
some kind. Like
No,
West
I
Wing
meant
reference
both of you.
2 plus or minus 1. I don't know. Yeah, I can see that. Sazed, he's strange. He's such a paradox to me because, like, yes, you're right. He's never explicitly been vying for control of anything. But at the same time, he's kind of a leader of himself and of his own people. Like, he stepped up and resisted the Final Empire when everyone else told him not to. If there's anyone who is willing to kind of make the choices that a leader needs to make. I do feel like it's Sazed. But what you said is so correct, John.
I would agree with that, but I also think that, like, even though, like, Seiza did step up to make those decisions for what he felt was best for his people, he never, like, chose to, like, organize other people to try to get this done. He was always kind of working individually, or he would find someone to work with, and they would be the ones, like, organizing what was going on and, like, talking to other people. He wasn't the one, like, making the big plans or anything like that.
Fair enough.
I got nothing else for this chapter.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple, straightforward chapter.
Yeah. 23. That is mine. I love this chapter. I've had dibs on it since the early days of the podcast. During the early days of Kel's original plan, I remember how much he confused us all with his mysterious 11th metal. He claimed that there were legends of a mystical metal that would let one slay the Lord Ruler, and that Kelsier himself had located that metal through intense research. Nobody really knew what Kelsier did in the years between his escape from the pits of Half-Sin and his return to Luthadel. When pressed, he simply said that he had been in the West. Somehow, in his wanderings, he discovered stories that no keeper had ever heard. Most of the crew didn't know what to make of the legends he spoke of. This might have been the first seed that made even his oldest friends begin to question his leadership. Back before the collapse and events that led to the Lord Ruler's death, Spook is surrounded by Ska thugs, lowercase t, one of which is his father, as they discuss what to do with him. Ska mistings aren't supposed to exist and are bound to be hunted by inquisitors. At his own father's urging, they agree to kill him. Then a man, Spook's mother's brother, Clubs, we miss Clubs, shows up and offers coins for him. He'll take Spook to Luthadel and protect him. At his mother's urging, Spook's father agrees. As Spook and Clubs leave, he asks the boy his name. Spook decides he doesn't want his old one and chooses a new one, Les de Bornes. I'm going to read the whole quote. Spook never did figure out whether or not Clubs knew how to speak Eastern street slang. Even if he did, Spook doubted that he would understand the reference. Les de Bornes, lefting, I'm born. Street slang for I've been abandoned.
So sad.
Lettier.
That made me pretty emotional to read as well. I won't lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
Later, Kelsier would decide Lester Bornes was too hard to pronounce and gifted him a new name.
Spoopy boy.
But, like, when I think back to this book, and people ask, what's the saddest thing in this book? Besides, like, everything that happens at the end, this is, like, one of the first things I think of. Because Brandon somehow takes a name that we've had for 2 whole books and twists it with the Southern street slang that we have known existed. I hate him. I hate him so much.
No, you don't. You love it.
It's true, but this is the type of things that make me love Brandon Sanderson. The tiny little detail, fun little tidbit, and for 2 books, you have no idea. And then just randomly, he brings it back and makes you cry.
That's what he does.
Very few of Sanderson's gut punches fail to land. Like, you usually hit me right in the gut, Sanderson. And this is no exception.
What's more annoying to me is the fact that Jadal and Margel is like the first we get both parents. This is like the only time we've seen in 3 books so far where we've got both mom and dad and the horrible people.
At least
I
his
mean,
mom called for clubs.
I wouldn't say that they're necessarily horrible people. They are trying to protect
Selves.
themselves and the rest of their families because
It's their family.
yeah, but it's the question of, do you give up one person, or do you try, or do you like run the risk of your entire family being destroyed?
So
But it really shows like, sorry, after you.
is this a parallel for like the tough decisions that we've been kind of discussing in the past couple chapters?
Yeah,
I was
I would
also
say
gonna
so.
say, sorry. Yes.
You're good.
I
You're
was
good.
also gonna say that it's. I was also gonna say that. Sorry, I'm repeating in case like my doesn't pick up because apparently it's been having that issue. It might also kind of show like we've only really seen one character's trauma from having their powers and being a ska, and that's Vin, and she's got Reem's voice permanently echoing in her ear all the time. And now we see Spook also had some really bad stuff happen due to the fact that, even though he got Allomancy, his family kicked him out. His dad had his boot on his neck. It couldn't have been good for Mare. It probably wasn't good for Kelsier and Marsh's mom either. Or themselves. Like, no ska Misting or Mistborn has ever had a good life.
Well, Kelsier and Marsh did.
Kelsier had a fun life, not a good one.
No, Kelsier and Marsh actually grew up for the first part of their childhood in a noble household before their mom was found out to be ska, and then they had to leave and run away.
But after that, it's had to, like, their mother probably got a iron hook through the neck, and who knows how long they were hunted for. That like. Which, question, does this mean that Spook's mom cheated on Jadal?
No, it's his grandparents, because his it must have been his like grandfather, because his uncle also has misting powers. So
it just skipped a generation.
yeah, it just skipped his mom.
Okay.
Dang, so it's really nobody's fault. It's just like this thing they have to deal with, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it kind of worked out for Spook, I think, in the end, because he got to join the Survivors crew, and clearly that had an impact on him, and we'll see how that continues to have an impact on him. But I do think it's kind of thematic with these books of like, whatever crazy, messed up journey you end up taking in life, it might lead you somewhere good.
Yeah. Anything else for this chapter set? Okie dokie. Well, next time we're going to be covering chapter 24 to 28. Kay, I believe you have dibs already on 24. I have dibs on 27. It's a TenSoon chapter.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can take it back.
No, I just haven't read them yet, so.
But it is time to head into the spoiler realm. So if you have not finished this book, the entire series, or potentially the entire Cosmere How's here? I have a problem. Then we recommend that you stop here because it is likely that we will talk about everything and anything. But if you are up to date, feel free to stick around because it is likely that we will bring up details you may have missed or plot threads that are still yet to come. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, star, heart, whatever it is on this podcast. Don't be afraid to comment your own thoughts and predictions. We would love to hear from you. But if this is where we must part, then my name is Reader, and I have been joined by Swiggity Swoo,
Count the skulls.
John,
I like turtles.
Kay,
Have a good one.
and this is, and don't forget, there's always a connection. And we're back. Kay, you have some grievances you would like to impart
No.
on us.
I said that I wasn't going to.
Well, you made a deal. You talked about it in the actual episode. This chapter set specifically, I think, was important to read the epigraphs because we spent a good while talking about each and every epigraph this episode.
I don't deny that we shouldn't talk about them. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you don't need to read it word for word.
But
I mostly do it out of tradition at this point, I will admit. Like,
I like the tradition of it. Also, we don't often get to read like specific sections unless it directly calls out to us.
See, we just like reading them. It's like popcorn reading. I don't know. So you choose. We chose.
Okay, but okay, we respect your right to just want to summarize, but please respect our right to want to.
If Juan was here, she'd have your back. I'm assuming.
We should have asked Dragon what he thought. Let's head back to chapter 19. So I don't think we need to really talk about why the apple black, which was the epigraph. The skull thing, we didn't talk about it at all last episode, but
well, that's because he hasn't counted the skulls yet.
No.
He was told it, but he hasn't done it yet.
yes.
So,
But
you know.
I felt dumb for what I said earlier because I mentioned how Kelsier lied about giving the pewter to Spook. That wasn't Kelsier.
you can
Correct.
look that out if you want. It was not Kelsier.
I mean,
And he technically didn't lie.
Right.
Yeah, true.
technically it was Ruin.
Is that to
who was
imply
telling
that
a lie.
Who's telling
hemalurgy
the
is
truth?
like a ruin-based magic?
It is.
Okay.
Hemalurgy
Yes.
is of ruin.
Yep. Even though it has like connections to every single shard. Same way metal
But-
does.
Yeah, but it is of ruin specifically. It
This
is.
is Ruin's investiture.
Mhm.
Well,
Well, we see it.
Yeah.
Well, so like, there's a couple times when maybe something similar to it happens, like like at the end of Rhythm of War, what Zeth does to Taravangian, that always struck me as like kind of a weird hemalurgic reaction in a way.
I gotta disagree. When he stabs Taravangian, when Taravangian takes Nightblood and stabs Odium,
Well, yeah, because it's kind of like almost transferring the power of Odium to Taravangian, like through a spike.
In the broadest terms, yes. But it's what happened there was they killed the Nightblood killed the vessel, and the power needs a vessel, so it latched onto the nearest one. So it was more of a.
Also, to form a hemalurgic spike, you need intent.
Right. That is true. And there's no way that Taravangian could have known
So it's not true hemalurgy.
to even have intent.
Yeah.
I can see the parallels you're trying to make. I don't think that's all at all.
Well, that's just like what always made that scene so cool to me is it's like all these different things coming together. Like, but that's super far in the future. We should get back to now.
There was a line by Harmony in the Epigraphs like 2 chapters ago how savants aren't human and like Inquisitors, like so Inquisitors aren't. Spook is one of the rarest things right now where he's both savant and think about it. Also, I really hate how Inquisitor means person with spike. We need a new term.
Hemalurgist.
Yeah, but we got mistings, we got fairings.
Hemalurgist.
Yeah, but we need a fun term. We got fairings, we got mistings, twinborns. We need a fun new term. People who have been spiked.
Don't ask me, because all mine are just going to be stupid jokes.
That guy got nailed hard.
Nailers.
The penetrated.
Oh, God.
All of you are terrible.
Yes, I warned you.
Thank you.
I warned.
My girlfriend would agree.
Okay, I don't think we have much else for this chapter. Chapter 20. So this is TenSoon's chapter.
Not a whole lot in this chapter either.
Nope, just TenSoon laying his trap of I want the dog bones back.
Yeah, he's gonna try to use them to escape.
True.
It is nice seeing. It's nice seeing MeLaan and seeing her relationship with TenSoon at this point in time, because you can really see how much she looks up to him here.
And I remember that.
In the Wax and Wayne books, we still see that when she talks about TenSoon. Like, she still really looks up to TenSoon a lot and has a lot of respect for him and who he is.
But I always forget TenSoon basically fathered. I'm good. In the best term, he is her father. Not literally, I know all the etc. But I kind of wish you got a little bit of MeLaan in era 2, like, hey, that's my dad kind of energy. I'm so proud of him. Isn't that cool? He taught me.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of wish we got a little bit of that.
That'd be nice, huh? But I feel like after so many hundreds and hundreds of years, the age difference probably starts to slip away in meaning to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else for chapter 20? No. 21. This one we might have things to talk about. So this is the Vin and Ellen chapter.
16.
16. Preservation's plan is in motion.
Yes, we are seeing parts of Preservation's plan.
I don't remember Preservation's
goal.
Plan.
We should just not tell him. Let's have him leave and go to the extra.
I mean, if you want.
No.
Yes.
I'll let Kay explain it because I keep interrupting her and I need to stop.
Also, hello, Dragon. Welcome on.
Welcome back, Dragon.
He's still connecting. Give him time.
Okay.
There we go.
I definitely just had a feeling
Hey.
like 1 minute ago where I was like, I bet Dragon's gonna get on.
You felt it through.
I really did. I could
the
sense
internet.
the subconscious. Subspace Highway.
We're about to talk about Preservation's 16-step plan.
So are we in
Kay was about-
spoilers?
Yes, we're in
Yes.
spoilers.
Kay
So
was about to explain that to Swiggity.
yeah, so preservation kind of left little clues throughout the religions, as well as within the natural phenomena. So, like for example, with the mists, and the number of the percentage of people that were snapping as a way to indicate that like something is wrong, something happening here is unnatural, and you need to pay attention to it because it's something that Ruin would be unable to change. And the same thing with like the leaving little bits of the prophecies, his prophecy in the different religions, for what would happen to have Sazed become the hero of ages and what Sazed would need to know. And he spread it throughout the different religions so as to make it so that that Ruin wouldn't be paying attention to it, that it would be so subtle and small that Ruin wouldn't take the effort to corrupt it to the point where people wouldn't be able to understand it. And with the 16, it's that 16% of the population gets struck down by the mists. 16% of that group stays sick for an extra 16 days after they get stricken by the mist. And that
16% of those become 8 listings.
no, those 16%.
Those are the ATM mistings.
Those are the ATM mistings. The ones who get sick for the extra 16 days are the ones who are the ATM mistings. And the other ones who got sick are regular mistings. Hence why some people die during the mist sickness is because they are being caused to snap. Because Allomancy was still in people before the Lord Ruler found the Laracium beads at the Well of Ascension. But it was locked farther into the genes, so it was harder to cause to come out. So hence why he has mists snapping people, and why it's so violent is because it has to be in order to allow those latent powers to emerge.
Why is it so important for the
Yep.
powers to emerge?
So that they can use them to fight Ruin and defeat Ruin. For example, like it's super important for the ATM mistings to have them around because someone needs to use up the ATM before Ruin can get to it. Because that is part of Ruin's power. Once he gets control of that, he has control of all of his power now. And then he would be able to destroy the world essentially instantly.
Quick question, Kate. Do
Mhm.
you know where is it? Is it an inference, or did you see somewhere specifically that says that the power was locked deeper into their blood, so it had to be harsher? That's the only thing out of what you've said that I don't recognize.
I remember that.
Because the thing that I do
remember
remember is specifically it said is that Ruin actually made the mists attacks harsher, specifically to make them seem scarier. than they actually are. And it does talk about that inside of book 3. And that's part of the reason why they think the mists are ruined, is because he puts his malice into the mist in order to make things more ruinous, to try to backfire the plan.
You're
Yeah.
both right, but I do believe there is either a wob, a reference to the fact that Alamantu was extremely rare in those days, and it did require harsher work to
Yeah.
bring them out.
Well, and we know that there was allomancy in the previous days because Alendi was a seeker.
Right.
Hence why he was able to hear the beating at the Well of Ascension. I thought it was in an epigraph.
I was gonna say, I'm like, I've always, because I do know it talked about like made it harsher to do that, and it's always just like this aspect that it's like mists themselves are like snapping people, but as they snap people, it just like, I always wondered if it's like, why didn't they necessarily snap beforehand? But I guess if it was like deeper, then there's a wob about that. It makes sense then. Also, a thought about that. If it's deeper in, would something besides the mist be able to then snap someone that has that locked inside of them, but could potentially have it come out, even if they don't have like any sort of enough lineage of like noble blood in them?
I think yes, but
So do we technically
it
could snap?
it would be very difficult because it would be something that would cause them to. It would be more likely for them to die first before
Right,
their
which is
powers snapped.
It would be like if not modern day, if current snapping takes place if a person is blacked out from being beaten. In the old
right.
days, they
But
would have
my
that
point
in
is
HoA.
it's like if the idea is that it just has to be harder, like then the mist, then just whatever physical mental strain would have to be equal to whatever the mist snapping them would be in order to equal the same thing, unless there's something to do with the fact that when the mist is snapping them, it's also potentially imbuing them with a piece of the mist itself in order to help awaken them. But otherwise, technically, Demu could have been awakened by the exact same level of pain. Otherwise, why would it have to be harder if it was, unless it, like, as long as it equaled it, if it's just about pain thresholds, and maybe it's higher than the regular snapping, like beating, it has to be up here, and then the mists hit here in order to draw it out because it's deeper in their blood or locked away deeper. But then if you had a beating that was up here at the same level, it would be able to snap them at the same point, unless it had to be the mist, at which point the mist is doing something to mess with their spirit in a sense, to unlock it as well as being painful.
The mist is drawn to people who have a capability of being an Alamancer if snapped. And depending upon how deep that is, or possibly even how rare the metal is, it could be harsher than what a normal person would get.
Right. So, but does it have to be mist that has to snap someone that wouldn't otherwise? That isn't just like, oh, I've got some bloodline in me, but to be part of the 16%.
I don't think so, but I think technically no, but I think in reality, to reach that level, the person would end up dying.
Yeah.
But the point is, you could reach that level. If the mist can bring you to that level and not kill you, then someone else could bring you to that level and not kill you. If you'd be brought to that level and die, then you would die because of the mist. Which a lot of people did, obviously.
But the mist is not actually physically hurting you. The main threat from a normal beating is like bruised organs or ruptured whatever, or cuts and bleeding. That's the threat.
Is the mist not hurting someone?
The mist is definitely causing physical ailment. One.
Yeah, right, because that's why they get weaker.
But it's not actually hurting. The mist does not cut you or punch you. The mist is not forming a fist.
Just because it's not leaving lacerations and bruises doesn't mean it's not causing you physical damage.
Yeah, which is
I always
that's
thought it was more
that's
like
why the mist
it's
kills
going-
people. That's like the whole point. The mist kills people. They have to calculate in the number of people died because mist literally killed people because it was physically damaging them.
No, I always viewed
Furthermore-
it more as it's sipping like into your brain and it's like firing on that activate pain or something. And that's why you got people twisting on the ground and sometimes a
But
person's
that's
heart.
still a physical thing that is happening.
No, it's like if you give a person a drug that brings up
That is a
the-
chemical reaction, which is physics.
Yeah, but
It is
I'm sorry,
physically
but-
affecting your
So
body.
I understand you're thinking it's not necessarily doing like physical damage to their body, but more physical damage to their
Yes.
brain. So if you
Yes,
found a
or
way
tricking
to
your
torture
brain
someone
into it.
that brought that physical pain just to their mind, but not to their body, then you could have the same result.
I think it's an illness. I don't
Yes.
think it's like a genjutsu. I think it's like an actual disease that they have to overcome.
On the other side of that whole spiel, I think that the mists have to be causing some sort of physical change in the person because
Ha ha ha! I found it! I found it! Chapter
Okay.
62, the epigraph in chapter 62 says, I suspect that Alendi, the man Rashik killed, was himself a misting, a seeker. Allomancy, however, was a different thing in those days and much more rare. The Allomancers alive in our day are descendants of the men who ate the few beads of preservation's power. So it says that it was more rare, not that it was
More
necessarily.
rare, but
Yeah, I think
right, and
from that,
it was still there.
yeah.
So the question is that offset? Does that mean that technically those 16? Because it said also the mist is attacked and like stuff like that back in Elendi's day. So technically, we have the 16% that the mist is making mistings,
hmm
right? And then in this day, they also have all of the descendants of the lords that are allomancers, which adds to the 16%, which now means that there's more than 16% of the population that are mistings.
Yes, but the
First of
16% is the, so if a person had already been, for example, the noblemen weren't getting attacked by the mist
Not a
sickness,
single nobleman ever got attacked.
correct? Because they were all beaten when they were children to try to release, and that either release their allomantic powers or did not, or they didn't have any. So none of the noblemen got hit by the mist sickness.
do we know
But
that?
Was it because they were beaten, or was it because they already had such a strong level of elemency? Because
No,
Terrismen also never
Kay's
got
gotta be
hit,
right.
and they were not beaten.
Kay's got to be right about that.
But the
The only
Terrismen
way
have
would've-
ferrochemy. But the Terrismen have been sectioned off so much from the rest of the population.
The two
That-
groups that weren't going to be attacked by it were the ferrochemists who did not have the allomancy gene at all, so it never went for them, and noblemen who have already done their own snapping, meaning anybody who, except for probably children at this point, which I doubt a lot of children were born by nobles in the past 3 years, were going to be, they had already been beaten and therefore they did not have the gene or their powers have awakened.
Which would change the 16% because we know that 16% of the population gets allomantic powers.
No, it's
But that's my point.
16%.
16% on top of what is already passed on by the Lorasium inside of noblemen. So that's why it's even more common inside of their days, because they have a line of noblemen that took it, and they have the 16%. So now you have something like 20-something% of people that actually have allomancy. Because the 16% they never
Right.
calculated in noblemen.
Well,
That
it would
never
be
ended up-
interesting. It
The
would be interesting to
16
think about. It would be interesting to think about what percentage of noblemen get allomantic powers.
That'd be interesting, yeah.
Is it 16% of the noble population that get allomantic powers?
No,
I'm gonna say no because
Okay,
because it
let's let
specifically
John finish
says.
what he's.
Sorry, yes.
Let's let John
was
finish
finishing,
his
yeah.
thought, and then we'll end the
I'm sorry.
discussion on because we've been on this for like 10, 15 minutes now.
Most of what I was trying to say is gone now, but I will say that. Shit, now that's gone too. Son of a bitch. Oh well, whatever.
I'm sorry, John.
There's obviously passion in the group about the subject.
I think it's hard. It's hard for me to believe that getting beaten almost to death would make you ineligible to be tested by the mist. I feel like that's something else.
Oh, I remember the thing. Sorry, I remember the thing. One of the things. So the army, not necessarily just comprised of one group or the other. That was the thing. We don't know what percentage of the army was noble and what percentage of the army was ska. Obviously, it was more ska than noble, but and if the numbers came out true, that means that an equal or an appropriate number of noblemen who were in the army from minor houses or whatever would have fallen to the sickness to make the numbers work out, which means that the mist has to be instilling the allomancy in people to some degree or another to make the numbers work. It's the only way to make it work.
I like your end conclusion because that's more of my belief is that allomancy, that the mists are adding just a fleck extra to what preservation powers they already have, right? Because humans already have slightly more preservation than ruin, and that is like that plus whatever's like deep in their blood is kind of what sparks it. But I do know at one point they specifically state like noblemen have never been struck down by the mists, which Quellian specifically ignore.
Okay, let's
That's
move
my
on.
only thought on that, but I do like your end conclusion. I don't know how to get to that same end conclusion, but I like it.
Okay, well, that works for me.
We've got two little acts of ruin, one act of ruin and one where he should have. He whispers in Vin's ear like twice, and he tries to break up, put a little wedge of distrust in between them. Yo, dude, you spent 2 books pushing them together. You are not gonna in the first 2 parts. Seriously, what are you trying to do? The whole character arc of Well of Ascension was she needs to love and trust Ellen. And now he's like, he's gonna betray you. He doesn't trust you.
He's just throwing out his usual, like...
Yeah, how does that help them find the ATM? It doesn't.
It doesn't, but he built up the relationship in order to break down the individuals.
Yeah. Which, on the other hand, like, why didn't he just, like, screw around? Like, he couldn't have thought, man, I know about 16. Like, why didn't I just mess around with those numbers really quick? I'm obviously paying enough attention to, whisper in Vin's ear every couple pages. Wow.
Right. Well, so here's the thing. I was trying to find it on my Arcanum Unbounded, but I couldn't find the specific spot. I just didn't, and I wanted to pay more attention to the conversation because I was starting to miss things that people were saying. But there's a piece in here where preservation is speaking to Kelsier, right? And he says he like goes on this little rampage like, why can't they see it? He's like, I hid this number, like I hid this message, 16, why aren't you looking for 16? And he goes on this little like mad rampage rant about like how he like set this subtle like this thing so subtly into motion that like not even Ruin would see it. Because to be honest, by this point, Ruin is more Ruin than he is AT.
But you would think Ruin the Shard remembers, hey, I, as part of this magic system, I, as
true,
a part
but
of the group that killed a Denalcium, no shards.
So that is AT. So AT is the intelligence behind the power. Right now, AT has been devoured by the power to a point where he is no longer particularly intelligent in the same sense that he was a couple millennia ago. And we know this because
that he has the intelligence. He's built
he still has high
intelligence,
and he has the power behind it, but he doesn't have the same cunning as, let's say, when we first get Todium put in, and he realizes that Odium was losing his wits as he was devoured, and he no longer had the same mind that he used to have. And Boyd points this out in a letter back and forth, and also to Odium as well. He's like, hey, you're kind of losing your wits. So we know that the power consumes the intelligence of the individual to a point where it can actually degrade where they can't think is straight. And so that's probably why it slipped fast. And that's my vote.
I disagree. I just think it's a little Rashek keeping a Lindy's logbook for no reason. This is Ruin could have solved all of his problems right here by just it's 32, it's 27, it's 2.
But 16 is a fundamental number in the universe. I don't think that Ruin could have changed it even if he wanted to.
I'm not saying he didn't change, because preservation in the little thing you were mentioning, the boiling point is 16 degrees as well. But I'm saying he could change the paper. He could change what they've been writing on.
But they're writing on...
They're using metal.
Yeah, they're using metal. Yes, they are.
Not in this point.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, they have been. The reports that Elend and I think Ham.
No,
I think it was Ham at the time. Were getting reports etched in metal because they knew anything written not in metal would be compromised.
Yes, they did have everything in metal, but what he has with him right then is because they say we checked this with the metal thing and then brought it here. But I'm saying when Norden does all the that's weird calculations. He's not, plus minus stamping that in the metal as he does his calculations. He's doing that on paper.
They write everything in metal. You're thinking about the Terris people. You're thinking about the Terris people who write things on paper and then double check it on their metal sheets.
And Ellen does request to make sure that all his calculations weren't altered by Ruin. And I think earlier they mentioned they were sending
messages. That's true, he does. Now that you mentioned that, I remember that.
I'm perfectly fine with that, but it's just in that moment.
So
the only reason Ellen asked for that is because 16 is so weird. But I'm saying, wouldn't Ruin throwing out random numbers make it less weird?
Actually, it'd make it draw more attention, because here's the thing: if you have someone that's as smart as Norden, and he's running calculations, and while he is writing, he sees his writing change. Norden could run that calculation in his head. He just writes it down because it's easier. Right? He's like, oh, let me run some calculations real quick. If you're writing and you see your times turn to a plus and a 4 turn to a 2, you're like, hold on, I didn't just write 26 divided by 32. I wrote 26 divided by 4. What's going on here?
The last time I tried to do my homework on LSD.
It's a tiny little thing.
And even if he didn't notice right then, he would check his numbers against the metal and go, these numbers are off. Let me run the numbers on the metal. And then he comes back and says, oh, hey, by the way, the number is 16. So either way, within a week, they would get to that point. So it'd almost be too obvious, because then Ruin's changing numbers while they're running, and he goes, no. Now he really doesn't want us to know this. It'd be too obvious.
Yeah.
If they get to that number,
little annoyance I have. Yeah. Anything else for this chapter? We need to move on from this chapter.
It's a good chapter.
Okay, great.
Whatever the number is.
Chapter 22. Sazed's chapter. The only thing we've really got from that... Sorry, after you, John.
No, I was going to say the only thing that's important is that the Terris people aren't getting the illness, because Terris people at this point haven't had allomancy introduced to their genetic heritage.
So
that was all I got.
If the Lord Ruler had never been such a stickler about separating them, do you think we would already have twin-born and people with allomancy and ferrocamen?
Yes, 100%.
And they'd be getting snapped by the mist.
It's been 1,000 years, and it took 300 years for twin-borns to become a thing.
We probably would have had someone who was...
You probably have it within the first generation.
Yeah. Well, and you would have had someone who was full Mistborn and full ferrochemist.
Which was obviously the whole point of separating them.
We don't know if a form can exist, though.
We do know, because Brandon actually mentioned at one point that he was planning Era 3 to be around a full-born assassin. Or no, it's a
I
Mistborn
don't
assassin. Never mind.
Mistborn assistant.
Yeah, he said
But Fullborn has
he
been
says the
talked about as a
prologues.
possibility.
Yeah,
Right.
the Fullborn's been theorized, but it has not like genetically been proven or shown to be something that can exist.
I mean, I feel like if it's possible for HoA to go around collecting all of these different magic systems, I feel like someone can be both full
Yeah, but he does it
full
with
Mistborn and
magic.
full Ferrochemist.
And here's
But he
my
does
other
it
thing
with
that Brandon
magic and
does.
cheats
He
them.
uses real life science to explain his magic, and so as he very specifically said, if I give you like someone can genetically get X, like I would expect you to be able to make conclusional like jumps as to how that can be used. So the point is, if you have Demu, who is now a Adium misting, marries this Terris chick that helps him at the end of book 3, like you can immediately assume that likelihood is there's a high chance that one of their descendants is going to be at least a twinborn, if not more. And the same thing with like, with like the Lord Mistborn with like Lesterborn as his kids. It's just like there is a genetic possibility. Again, it's like rolling 1,000 nat 20s in a row. Like the chances are extremely slim.
But mathematically,
But never zero.
Mathematically, it's there. And if you look at the chance that Chris talks about when she talks to
the different
Wax?
types of twinborns.
Wax, she says he's like, oh yeah, she's like, you're a crasher, and he's like, yeah, it's got to be common. She's like, actually no, not even one in over a million people have the combination.
Like, there's only been
twinborn
three. There's only been 3 of you in the history of
right. So if
but then again,
so if the chance is only having a crasher, born, the chances of having a twin, a fullborn, is again next to nothing, but not nothing. And the point is,
but that's assuming that it is possible to be a fullborn. We do not know if that is possible yet.
We have no reason to think that it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
That's
in
true.
Fact,
but
we sort of have an example of it, albeit an artificial one with Rashik.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like if you took like
I said it was an artificial example, but it is an example.
I mean, it's like if you took a midget and like cut off his legs and put on like a tall person's legs on.
No, it's not.
No?
Not even a little bit. Not even a little bit. If you knew anything,
that part and added a whole other part.
No. That's not how.
Together.
That is not how it works.
The 2 powers were stitched together in a way that is not
But
genetically.
But it doesn't matter.
That's why,
because
like, the Lord Ruler's children were like, "Can we hear about that?" Like, because they would have that potential.
The Lord Ruler has children.
They have to have that potential.
What I would like to know about is why we never get a fairing until Era 2. We never see a fairing with one ferrochemical power.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's a very interesting point.
That's because of how tight-knit the ferrochemists have been. They have
why is it everything? Why is it all or nothing? That's my question.
Right. I wonder if Sazed changed ferrochemy to more like line up with
Humo.
Right.
I'll agree with John.
Honestly,
I'll agree with Dragon's thing on the confusion of why is it all. I don't know that. Brandon hasn't really given. But John, I believe the reason the ferrochemists have had a single metal fairing is because they've been really closely, I hate to say bred, but their gene pool hasn't really expanded all much. It's been very close-lipped. We can assume that the original Allomancers, the first couple generations or so, were still full Mistborn.
No,
so
we can't. We have evidence to the contrary. It talks about mistings being able to, with a mere thought, take over Kolos and Kandra, which means we know that there are mistings very, very early on.
Do we know that, or is it just that?
Yes, we do.
Let's say so from like 1 to 10, right? 1 being the original Allomancers, 10 being where Vin is now. 10 cannot control a Kandra. 1 definitely can. If at 5, that's when Misting starting showing, they could still. We don't know at what level
But,
Kandra's
Yes, we do.
resistance is stronger than Allomancer.
Yes.
Because we have
so-
a 1 in front of us
so-
in Ellen.
Well,
Yes, but
also,
we don't know.
I want to point out.
There's 1,000 years between a 1 and a.
Can I say something?
Please.
Can I say something? Thank you. Because I've been trying to and keep not being able to talk. So with your point, reader. So there were mistings we know at least by year around the 300-year mark, because TenSoon was born around the 200-year mark, and he was there. He was one of the groups of Kandra that were being persecuted by the Mistborns and the Mistings, and he was part of the group that created their contracts with the humans to say that they weren't going to kill humans and destroy them. I also wanted to say, I'm not done yet. Thank you. I also wanted to say that
I'm out here raising my
It's the
hand.
best episode of all time.
Raise your hand with the people. You keep it down until she's done.
I also wanted to say earlier with John's comment, I also felt like that Sazed, I definitely thought that for a while, was that Sazed changed feruchemy and caused it to be so that there were fairings, because feruchemy's been around for a significant portion of time. Like, it didn't start within the last 1,000 years. It's been around the entire time that this planet has been around. And throughout that entire time, at least as far as we are aware, there has not been a fairing until after the Catasandra, after Sazed took over Harmony's powers. Before, every time someone who had feruchemy had the full set of feruchemical powers. They didn't have only one. So I believe that Sazed did something to change feruchemy in order to break it up more like allomancy is, to, I think, try to prevent even more so having someone have being both a full Mistborn and a full feruchemist, because he knew the danger that could present. Yes, reader, you can speak now.
Okay.
I do have something to say to support readers' theory, by the way. To play devil's
Okay,
advocate.
I'll really quickly. I'm going to talk about the. So yes, we can say that mistings appeared on the 3 scale. So 1 to 10.
At least.
At least at 3. Yes, but we can still assume that at 5, that's when the Kandra's mental fortitude beat out Allomancy. That's when Allomancy got so diluted. There's still we don't know the gap in between when Allomancy got so diluted to when Kandra were stronger then. We do not know that point. For all we know, it was 100 years ago that Kandra got stronger. It could have been literally the next generation after those ones. Could have been 4. We don't know that number.
Right. And
sorry, what?
I was saying right, and that's because I was actually just agreeing is that number is we don't know, and your initial point was it'd be several generations of Mistborn, because here's the thing, generation particularly in this time is still around like 50. It's about every 15 to 20 years they're having kids, right? Closer to 15, 20 for the girls. So a year, 100 years. So right between 1 and 3, that's 300 years. And you say a few generations, reader, of Mistborn.
Yeah, that's still quite a lot.
That could be 60 years is a few generations. That could be technically up to 4 generations. And so it could be before even the second Conjurer born.
We
You
do
could
have
have
a wob.
basically, several hundred Mistborn.
Oh,
by that
oh,
point.
Swiggity,
Swiggity Swoo.
what's the
We do
law?
have a wob here. Okay, this was asked by Wetlandern W. Why do the twin-born and alloy of law have only one ferrochemical power, when all previous ferrochemists, in spite of breeding programs, could use all the metals? Or were fairings always part of the system and we just didn't meet them in Mistborn? Brandon Sanderson. The fairings are a new development since Mistborn, as the ferrochemists have been interbreeding with the allomancers. Basically, the allomancy genes interfere with the ferrochemist genes, breaking it down and creating the limitations we see in Alloy of Law.
So it's a whole different thing.
There you go. So it's actually because allomancy has the ability to have one, it makes feruchemy have the ability to have one. At which point you can technically have someone that has some allomancy blood, but not enough to become misting, enough to become a ferret. You have people that are just upper minds, right? People that
Which
are
I
just...
think that proves that a full-born is then. Unless you have a full allomancer.
I don't think a full-born
And
is
then on the off
possible.
chance,
I
I
didn't
don't think so.
research it, but someone
Swiggity
had mentioned a wob where he had said a full-born's not possible. And I didn't seek out that wob, but it was part of what led
This
me
was
to that.
supposed to be a short chapter.
You didn't bring that up earlier?
I
Swiggity?
just saw that just now.
Swiggity's been like making popcorn, just watching. Oh.
Well, I kept expecting the conversation to come to some sort of conclusion.
No, that can never happen on this podcast.
It's not a conclusion when there is no when there is no wob, Swiggity.
The conversation will come to a conclusion when the Cosmere comes to a conclusion.
The
Probably long after
conversation-
that, actually.
The conversation will
Probably
come to a
long after
conclusion
that.
when I die.
Because we're still not getting answers on Lutha, classical Scadrial, Roshek's kids. We're not getting answers on that.
I
Anytime.
feel like you're
Who
really
knows?
focused on that, reader.
Classical Scadrial was Space Age.
I'm with him.
calling it.
I'm with
I
him.
It was
believe it.
not.
I'm right there with you, reader.
I believe it.
Something weird was happening. There's like a whole secret history to the Cosmere we know nothing about. I'm convinced that half the heralds were the 5 scholars. I don't want to get into it.
Dragon, were you here for that theory of mine? I'll take that as a yes. So I'll just chapter 23.
Sorry. I do want to just say, Swiggity, real quick about your scholars comment. No, they were not the heralds, but they did. Vasher and Shishara did base their creation of Nightblood off of shard blades that they saw on Roshar.
I think it was something like that got me there.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
in a fever dream.
Chapter 22 is over. Chapter 22 is over.
And another thing about chapter 22.
No. Chapter 23. We should not have much to talk about here.
We said last
Folly to
time.
say that, reader, because
This is
everyone
the
will want to
Spook
prove you wrong.
backstory chapter. The only thing I've really got to mention is the line about this might have been the first seed that made even his oldest friends begin to question his leadership. This feels totally random to me and just feels like a gaslight at Kelsier for no reason. Saz is just throwing shade. I don't know why.
But they were kind of questioning Kelsier and like what he was doing. They weren't really sure if this was like going to work or this was even the right thing to do, or even if Kelsier knew what he was doing.
We know, like,
Yeah, but I feel like
Gemmel gave him the
It's
11th
weird.
medal, right?
So he
Gemmel-
found it when so Gemmel had him
So
break
Gemmel-
into a nobleman's house, and he found the I can't remember if he found the 11th medal in there or if he found a clue to it or something.
A
He
clue
found
to it, I
something related to the 11th medal in that house.
I believe that I'm not positive. It's been a while since I've listened to it. But I guess I could potentially just find it. I think it's inside of here.
It's in the
I believe the full-born metallurgist nobleman found it. He was led to it by Ruin, I think.
Gamma was spiked. That nobleman was spiked.
No, Gemma wasn't spiked. He was just crazy.
Gemma was spiked.
Yes, he
No,
was.
Oh, he was?
He
Gemma
was.
I thought he was
spiked.
just crazy.
Confirmed Lob.
It came! I knew something Kay didn't!
I just thought he was just
I need a
crazy.
counter for that.
The day has come!
Generally, when someone's absolutely off the rockers nuts, it's because it's
That's fair.
You
But,
cannot
like-
ruin this day for me.
But like Vin's mom was just crazy.
Yeah, Vin's mom was just cuckoo. But I'm so happy. Is there anything else we would like to do? Chapter 7.
Peter, do you have anything else that you want to try to say that you might know that Kay might not know?
Classical stage royal is space age.
No
It
way.
is not. Absolutely not.
I would say early industrial at best.
I do feel like
well,
there's
that's
some,
gonna
Yeah.
just
like,
about.
early world
I
hoppers.
would-
Like there's a whole early generation of stuff that went on that we just know nothing about. Like there has to be like interplanetary communication.
Well, yeah, but it would have been through Shadesmar, not.
Not rocket
Mm.
ships.
Think of how cool
Spaceships.
it'll be if when we get to space era, we find out like, wait, there's long lost satellites made by the classical Scadrian. How cool would that be? Maybe you find some descendants of classical Scadrians, or maybe they've evolved, or maybe there's a bioweapon or something.
No,
they've
I agree with
contaminated
John.
out
They were pre-industrial at best. Because we know that they had guns, but that's about
No
it.
imagination.
Wait, they had guns?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, because gunpowder was specifically suppressed by the Lord Ruler, which means he had to have known about it and what it was.
Well,
Yeah.
it
He had to
actually
have
talks.
had gunpowder.
Actually, stays it talks specifically about one in I believe in this book. It says that they can like that he's like it's very interesting that we should have been more realized like that there was like what was going on because there was no technological advancements because when people got guns it was easier to train and get rebels.
Mm.
be able to
Someone
fight.
untrained
Had
can
guns.
use it.
So
I was gonna say
trained
someone
it.
untrained can use a gun, but someone untrained cannot use a sword.
That was like
or a bow.
one of my
specifically,
favorite
is
lines.
that people have to train for years in order to know how to use a bow properly. So he suppressed like guns and technology. Typically.
That's like one of my favorite lines from that book, The Dark Knight Returns, like the graphic novel. He's like guns give people power they don't deserve. It's kind of that same idea.
Yeah.
Like getting the power of a Mistborn is kind of like something you have to earn.
And he was gonna
Or just randomly get attacked
One
by
shot.
feral particles of water.
Well,
yeah, totally earned that.
but you still gotta survive.
Totally earned that feral piece.
Hey, though, I feel like when you're in a mist sickness, that's probably like the worst couple days of your life.
Also,
Well, that's
question,
gonna
quick
just
question.
about-
Sorry, just a quick question. I'm so sorry, reader. I know you keep trying to like close up. I just had a
We're
quick
trying
question.
to end it, but we're not gonna have it.
I'm so sorry. But do we know how have we heard of anything about how ferochemical powers get unlocked? Or are
No.
they just like
You have them from like
Do
your
you just
earliest
have them
youth, I think,
from birth?
because we get a glimpse of Wax using them in his very, very, very young days.
But we also don't know in Era 2 how snapping works. Supposedly Sazed made some changes to the mist. that made it easier, or he made it some changes to elements in general that made it. But there's still unclear things about whether or not there's still like beating chambers. Go find out if you have magical powers. Step right in, sign a waiver. There's still
You're
unclear
paying
about that.
them
I do believe
$200 to get the
I
crap beat out
do
of you.
believe ferochemy is done from. I do believe ferochemy is if you put like a steel coin in a baby ferochemist, they could accidentally pour all their weight into it and start
Okay, cool.
iron.
Sounds
not
good.
Steel.
I would believe that. I was just wondering if we had heard anything specifically about it, because I hadn't. So
I haven't heard anything specifically, but I don't know. My thought is if there, it could be, but there hasn't been anything talked about. Like, there's never a mention of someone having to have something happen in order to get further. And, you know, who knows? Maybe there has to be some sort of mental trauma.
Maybe.
Maybe it
Oh,
requires a
but-
moment of zen.
I think the reason like ferochemy is inertly in you is probably because it's the power like that was before preservation and ruin.
well, preservation and ruin made the planet.
Well, what I mean
Yeah.
is like
It wasn't
But
before
it's the
preservation,
power
no,
before
but it's
out-
before
before
the
Allomancy.
conflict, right? Before
Yes.
Yes.
Furukami was just probably planted as a natural part of humanity.
Hey, let's test to see if
Us
this
getting-
works.
Getting coalesced is just like humans just get Furukami.
I think ferochemy is a balance. It's the balance between preservation and ruin.
Well, yeah.
That-
And neutral.
Yeah.
yeah.
so it's more of just a
I've
natural
always
thing.
thought that.
It's not like a mutation or
Yeah.
something that was done with the power.
Being born with 6 toes. Hereditary but rare.
Well, that's going to just about cover it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us for predictions. And I'm going to finish this before anybody else. We cannot wait to cover what is next in Cosmere Connections. See you next time. Goodbye.
Plus, with different spikes have different powers.
Adios.
Good night.
So on a whole different like plane of reality, I spent about 6 hours yesterday cleaning PLA off of my 3D printer's hot end.
Yikes.
Yeah, there was like a 2-ounce wad of clear plastic completely encasing the hot end.
Yeah, I had to deal with that too. It was all inside, all outside. I got like a heat gun. I got like a hair dryer basically. Just pointed at it.
What I ended up doing is I broke off as much as I could with like pliers and side cutters.
Mhm.
And then when I couldn't get any more to come loose, I just preheated the hot end and then grabbed it, like the remaining chunk with a
Gloves or something.
no, an adjustable wrench, basically.
Ah, okay. That makes
And
sense.
just once it got to about 130 degrees, just all popped right off. I was like, damn, I wish I had tried that sooner.
Hey, so reader,
See,
you,
I
the
took
wires
mine
for
almost
the-
like
I'm sorry, I thought you guys were
Sorry.
done.
The wires for the thermistor and the heating element were both completely encased in plastic, so I had to break those free first.
jeez.
And it's finally up and running. I just got it going about, I don't know, 20 minutes before we started.
Just in the nick of time.
I basically took mine almost completely apart when I did it.
Me too. I had to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, question, reader, why did you have to go to the basement to refill your water?
That's where the kitchen is.
Oh.
There's
So
not
if
a.
I have
drinkable water, I've got to go 3 flights down and drink
The
that hot
bathroom
water.
doesn't have a faucet with potable
It
water.
does,
How do you brush
but
your
it's
teeth?
got a warning label on it. Do not drink or something. I'll use it to brush my teeth, but I'm concerned about whether or not I can drink it.
so
Oh,
Speaking of 3D printing, Reader sent me this for my birthday.
nice.
Nice.
It literally made like my whole week. Like I was so happy.
That's cool. Did you
I
design
tried
that,
to
Reader?
do. I took the image from the Way of Kings. What I originally tried to do is I tried to put your faces over the images of like your Windrunner and Kay, you're an Edge Dancer. I tried to do that first, but that wasn't working out good with Photoshop. So what I did is I grabbed the emblem and I slapped that onto it, and then I put Happy Birthday, and then I put like to the smartest one of the group to the one who does all the work.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Sorry to ruin what yours says, Kay.
The other
It's okay.
it's accurate. The other thing I wanted to bring up was I made a post on Facebook in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere this past week, and it got a lot of traction. The post was Cosmere themed ice cream flavors. And so we have a
Birthberries.
ton of people.
I think I vaguely remember seeing that. I didn't actually click on it, but I think I saw that.
It just kept going. People just kept coming up with them. We got you want to read a couple?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We got Cookies and Creme, Rockbud Road, Rusty Road, Palafruit Sorbet, Chol Tracks, love that one. Nails Nuts, Surprise All Metal, Shard Blade Sherbet, Shin Vanilla, Yummy and the Nightmare Painter, Chol Dung, Vanilla, Strawberry Jam, Lightweaver Lemon, Death Sunsun Vanilla, Rock Stew, Marshmallow, Strawberry Spore, Crisp and Creme. Oh my god, there's so many of these.
I do want to say real quick, because I'm going to bring it up again, is that I think that we should do summaries for the epigraphs, because, listen, we already do a summary anyway. After you
Okay.
read it, you summarize it anyway. So, therefore, I think we should just do the summaries.
Can
I
you
just
bring it
like
up on your
reading
chapter?
them.
Because I
Like,
actually have some.
I enjoy like getting to read
This
from a
chapter
book,
said.
you know? Like I kind of enjoy it. Like it's not even about time or anything. It's just like it's a fun part of the podcast
Okay,
for
can
me.
can we argue this actually in the episode? I actually have a few things I want to bring up to try to defend my position that kind of tie into this chapter side.
I mean, I don't really feel like there's a reason to bring it up during the episode. I'm
That's
just.
what you said. It's fun. By the way, we are making great time this episode.
Short chapters, huh?
Yeah, the chapters were short. I was gonna say
Touche.
that.
I actually just kept on reading after on Monday I read through the 4 for yesterday. Or not yesterday, but Tuesday. Wow, Wednesday was like a whole day. I blocked that
It's
day
how
from
it
my
works,
memory,
man.
dude. I blocked it out. That was a bad day for me.
Oh,
I just came home and slept. You know what happened? This is wild. I don't recommend this. I had McDonald's and Wendy's in the same day. And I got home, my stomach hurt so bad. And I was so tired from doing the podcast. It was a bad time. I was like, this is the worst day ever.
Every time I come home from work, I drive past a McDonald's and I have to stop myself from going into McDonald's to get a McFlurry, because every time I see it, I'm like, McFlurry. Then I'm like, no,
Right?
you can't go and get a McFlurry. You need to go home.
So I have to pass by 3 of them. and 2
I actually have to
wedges.
pass by 2,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And then if you make it past the first 2, you're doing good. But that third one, it's on the right side of the road too.
Carrie, is there any? Sorry.
Oh, I was saying that there are 2 that I passed. There's one on each side of the road, so I have to
No matter
pass it
which
each way.
Yeah. What we have around here is we have Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if you have that.
Yeah, we have Dunkin'.
There's one like every
American
5
runs out.
miles.
Yeah, there's one actually like right around the corner from my school, which I also have to stop myself from going to.
Mhm. The only way I cut myself off from going to Dunkin's is that I just started making coffee at home, and now I just love like homemade black coffee, and like Dunkin's just doesn't taste as good anymore. Otherwise, I'd still be addicted.
I've started making cold brew in like 2 pints,
Ooh,
or no, 2 quart,
that
2
sounds
quart
good.
mason jars. Yeah, and it's really like easy. There's this like kit that we bought that's got like a metal filter that sits right on the top of the jar, and you screw on the
Hey,
lid with a little pouring thing.
John, I think I have the same one.
Yeah,
Because I
It's-
also have the exact same thing to make cold brew.
it's pretty cool, and I can, I just throw some coffee in there, put it in the fridge overnight, and then in the morning I have delicious coffee. Yep.
I'll bring.
Okay, I'm going to stop
rebel.
the recording now. And the episode will be over.
Okay.
Swiggity just like cuts John off mid sentence.